This is Pause and Respond. I'm Josh Ryan, licensed counselor and author of the Pause and Respond framework. After years of working in high-stakes situations like addiction, relationship breakdowns, leadership pressure, one pattern is clear. Reaction creates chaos, and response builds control. Season 1 was all about awareness. Season 2 is all about control. Because awareness without discipline changes nothing. If you're still losing control, if you're still reacting instead of responding, still letting your mood set the tone in your home, your work, or in your relationships, this season is for you. Calm is not weakness. Calm is authority. And emotional control is not personality. It's training. So let's build on it. Most people believe that their temperament is fixed. They say things like, I've always been like this. I just have a short fuse. My dad was the same way, or that's just how I am. That language may sound harmless, but it isn't. Because the moment you label your reaction as personality, you remove responsibility for training it. Let's get honest. You weren't born slamming doors. You weren't born shutting down. You weren't born sending that message that you later regret. Those are all learned behaviors. You learn them watching someone. You learn them surviving something. You learn them repeating something. And repetition turns behavior into reflex. Here's how it works. You get triggered, you react, the tension drops, even temporarily. That relief rewards the behavior, so you do it again. That's conditioning. The brain doesn't care whether the reaction was helpful or harmful. It only cares that the tension decreased. So now you call it personality, but it's not personality. It's practice. And the dangerous part, if you believe it's personality, you'll actually defend it. You'll justify it. You'll build arguments around it to keep it instead of rebuilding it. Emotional control is not about becoming someone else. It's about retraining what you practiced unconsciously. You trained the reaction. That means you can train the response. Pressure reveals that training. Pressure is honest. It doesn't ask you who you want to be. It reveals who you've been practicing. Anyone can look controlled when things are calm. Traffic is light. Deadlines are manageable. Conversations are pleasant. That's not control. That's comfort. Control is measured under stress. When you're tired, you feel disrespected. When money is tight, when your spouse challenges you, when your child talks back, when your boss criticizes you, that's where the truth shows up. And here's the key. Pressure does not create your reaction. It exposes your training. If you escalate quickly, that's trained. If you go silent and then resentful, that's trained. If you get sarcastic, that's trained. If you blame others instead of taking responsibility, that's trained. You didn't decide those reactions in the moment. They were automatic. And automatic means they were practiced. Think about this. The military drills under pressure so that soldiers don't freeze. Athletes train under fatigue so they perform under the lights. Pilots rehearse emergency scenarios so panic doesn't take over. Why? Because under stress, you don't rise to your intentions. You fall to your training. Most men are trying to rely on intention. I don't want to yell. I don't want to overreact. I don't want to say something I regret. That's intention. But without training, intention collapses under pressure. So what do disciplined people do differently? They rehearse calm. They practice slowing down when it doesn't matter so they can access it when it does. They lower tone on small disagreements. They breathe when the stakes are low. They choose clarity over dominance in everyday conversations. That builds neural familiarity. Then, when real pressure hits, their nervous system recognizes the pathway. And that's authority. Not suppression, not pretending, not bottling emotion. Simply training. Pressure isn't your enemy. It's feedback. If you don't like what shows up under stress, you don't need shame. You need repetition in a new direction. Let's get something clear. Emotional control is not about being calm all the time. It's about having access to control when it matters. There's a difference. Anyone can be calm on vacation. Anyone can be calm when they're winning or when they're feeling respected and appreciated. That's not strength. Strength shows up when you don't feel respected, when you are feeling dismissed, when you are being challenged, when you are feeling or being exposed. Emotional control is the ability to feel the surge and still choose your next move. It's the gap. That gap between stimulus and response is where authority lives. Most people collapse that gap. They have the trigger, the reaction, and the aftermath. Disciplined people stretch the gap. They have the trigger, they have awareness, decision, and then delivery. Now that stretch might only be 3 seconds, but those 3 seconds can save a marriage conversation, protect a relationship with your child, preserve your credibility at work, prevent a regret that lingers for years. Here's what most people confuse. They think control means suppression. It doesn't. Suppression is pushing emotion down. Control is holding emotion steady long enough to direct it. You can be angry and be controlled. You can be frustrated and controlled. You can be disappointed and controlled. Control is not the absence of intensity. It's the presence of discipline. And discipline is built. No one lifts heavy weights without repetition. No one runs a marathon without conditioning. Why would emotional strength be any different? If you've never practiced slowing down your nervous system, never practiced lowering your tone intentionally, never practiced pausing before you respond, then of course all this feels impossible. You don't rise to your ideals. You rise to your reps. Emotional control is built in reps. Small reps, daily reps, unseen reps. That's what we're doing this season. We're building reps. Now let's make this practical. Because control without structure becomes vague, here's the framework. 3 parts: simple, repeatable, and trainable. Notice the body before the words. Emotion always hits the body first, always. Before you speak, before you justify, before you defend, your body begins to shift. Your jaw tightens, your neck stiffens, your chest might compress, breathing tends to shorten. Heat rises behind the eyes. This is not random. That's activation. Most people miss this stage. They become aware after they've already spoken, after the volume rises, after the sarcasm lands, after the door closes. But if you catch the body, you catch the moment early. The body is the first warning. The disciplined move is not to talk first. It's to scan first. What is happening in my body right now? That one question slows the reaction loop. If you can catch the physical surge, you stay in control of the narrative. Next is slowing the physiology on purpose. You cannot out-logic adrenaline. You cannot debate spikes in cortisol. When your nervous system spikes, your reasoning begins to narrow. This is biology. This is not weakness. So you counter biology with regulation. Slow breathing is not soft. It's neurological leverage. Inhale 4, hold 4, exhale 6. Longer exhale than inhale. That signals safety to your system. And safety begins to restore clarity. 3 cycles. Doesn't have to be traumatic. It doesn't have to look obvious. It just has to be enough to interrupt the body surge. You're not trying to eliminate the emotion. You're trying to lower it from an 8 to a 5. At a 5, you have options. At an 8, you have nothing but impulses. And control lives at a 5. Next is lowering the volume, but not the message. This is where most people either overcorrect or underperform. They think control means silence, or they think control means dominance. Neither of those build respect. The goal is clarity with steadiness. Same message, lower tone, fewer words, slower pace. Instead of, you never listen, try, I need you to hear this. Instead of, what's your problem? Try, walk me through what happened. The issue stays, but the delivery changes. And delivery often determines outcomes. A steady voice forces the room to match it. A raised voice escalates the room. Authority does not argue louder, it stabilizes. You are not trying to win the moment, you are trying to control the entire direction. That's leadership, whether you're at home, at work, or just being with yourself. Now, to bring it all together, right, the body awareness catches it early. Breathing lowers the surge. Delivery directs the outcome. That's the framework, not complicated, but it requires repetition. You won't get this perfect, and that's not really the goal. The goal is 1 rep, 1 caught surge, 1 slowed breath, 1 steadier sentence. That's how identity shifts. Not through motivation, but through practice. Why this matters at home so much. Control is impressive at work, but at home, it's transformative. Because at home, you're not performing, or at least you shouldn't be. You are modeling. Your spouse does not just hear your words. They feel your nervous system. If your tone is sharp, the room tightens. If your energy is unstable, the whole house shifts. If your frustration begins to leak, everyone in that home begins to absorb it. And here's what a lot of people miss. Your family doesn't need perfection from you. What they need is predictability. They need to know that when something goes wrong, you're not going to explode. You're not going to disappear, and you won't try to dominate and black out the room. They need to know that you're steady. Steady builds safety, and safety builds openness. When your spouse feels safe, they communicate more honestly. When your children feel safe, they admit mistakes faster. When your home feels safe, conflict doesn't turn into war. But volatility does the opposite. A raised voice may win the moment. It loses long-term influence. A sarcastic comment may feel justified, but understand that it builds distance. A slammed door may release your tension in the moment, but it's building fear. And fear does not build respect. Let's go even deeper. If you're a father, your children are not just listening to what you say. They are studying how you regulate. They are learning. Is stress handled with calm or chaos? Is frustration expressed with clarity or intimidation? Is disagreement safe or dangerous? They will carry your nervous system into their adulthood, not your lectures, but your regulation. If you're a husband or a wife, your spouse does not need you to be louder. What they need from you is to be anchored. When you're anchored, conversations don't spiral as quickly. When you're anchored, disagreements don't escalate as far or as quickly. When you're anchored, repair happens faster. Stability builds respect. Not because you dominate, but because you are safe to engage. That is leadership, not control over others. And the person who can regulate him or herself creates a home that feels different. It feels quieter, clearer, safer. And that matters more than most people realize. If this is landing for you, here's the truth. Understanding this isn't enough. Insight does not rewire reflex. Repetition does. You can listen to this episode 10 times and still react the same way tomorrow if you don't practice. That's why I created the Pause and Respond workbook, not for inspiration, but for training. It walks you through identifying your specific triggers, mapping your reaction patterns, and building deliberate responses before pressure hits. Because under pressure, you don't rise to what you heard, you fall to what you've rehearsed. Listening creates awareness. Writing creates clarity. Practice creates control. If you're serious about becoming someone who responds instead of reacts, don't just consume this. Train it. The workbook information is in the show notes. But for now, let's keep going. The identity shift. Here's where this stops being about techniques. This is not about breathing. It's not about tone. It's not even about anger. It's about identity. You are becoming someone. Every reaction is casting a vote. Every pause is casting a vote. You are either reinforcing that you're reactive, that you're intense, that you have a temper, or that is just how you are. Or you're enforcing that you're steady, that you don't rush, that you think before you speak, and that you control your direction. Identity is built through repetition, not intention. You don't wake up one day disciplined. You practice discipline until it feels familiar. And here's the part most people underestimate. The people around you are already forming conclusions. Your spouse is forming conclusions. Your children are forming conclusions. Even your coworkers. They are asking silently, is he predictable? Is he or she safe? Does he or she escalate? Or are they stable? Reputation is built under pressure, not in calm moments. When something goes wrong, that's when identity becomes visible. And once a pattern sets in, it begins to harden. If you are known as the man or woman who reacts quickly, people brace before they speak. If you are known as the man or woman who stays steady, people lean in more confidently. The difference changes your influence. This is bigger than mood. This is about becoming the stable one in the room. Not the loudest, not the most dominant or the most emotional, but the most regulated. Because regulation builds trust, and trust builds authority. And authority ultimately leads to influence. You don't have to announce this shift. You just build it quietly. One pause at a time, one lowered tone at a time, one measured response at a time. And over months, something changes. You don't feel hijacked so easily. You don't feel as urgent to defend yourself. You don't feel as threatened by the thought of a disagreement. That's growth. That's training. That's the reps showing up. And ultimately, that's identity shifting. Calm people win, not because they overpower, but because they last. All right, everyone, this week's assignment. We're not chasing perfection. We're building reps. This week, I want one controlled rep. Not 10, not all day, just one. When you feel the physical shift, the tightening of your jaw, or the shortness of your breath, don't speak immediately. That's the rep. Let the surge rise, then interrupt it. Breathe slowly. Lower your tone intentionally before the first sentence leaves your mouth. Then ask one question instead of making an accusation. That's it. You're not trying to become a different person in 7 days. You're trying to prove to yourself that control is accessible. When you complete that one rep, I want you to notice what happens. Did the conversation escalate less? Did you feel less regret afterwards? Did you maintain more clarity as to what your point was? That feedback matters because confidence and control builds quickly. The first time you pause successfully, something shifts internally. You begin to realize, I can stop this. And once you realize you can stop it, you can shape it. And once you can shape it, you're not reactive anymore. You're deliberate. That's the beginning of authority. This week, one rep, one pause, one controlled delivery. That's how discipline compounds. That's how identity shifts. And that's how a home feels different 6 months from now. Not because you talked about it, but because you practice it. This conversation sharpens your thinking. Follow the show and share it with someone who values control over chaos. For deeper application of any of the skills or thoughts that you may have heard during this episode, please feel free to visit pauseandrespond.com. And remember, folks, less reaction equals more choice. I'll see you soon.